Let's take a look at Project 5, Part 2. Which of the following options might cause bias? And this is referring to the first part of the project where we looked at a survey that a journalist is doing based on a sample of inhabitants from the kingdom. So which of the following options might cause bias? And they give you these answer choices. Usually using randomly chosen people and creatures, using people and other creatures from randomly chosen parts of the kingdom, using a proportional amount of people, using only people and other creatures who live close to Calamity's home, using creatures but not people, using people but not creatures. So these are all referring to kind of who we're using in the sample, right? And remember that a bias is just some sort of lopsidedness or unfairness. For example, let's say we were talking about a classroom and it was a math class and we surveyed all the students who got an A on their last test and we said, do you enjoy this math class? And we only surveyed the students who got an A on their last test. Well, chances are that's going to be a biased sample. If you got an A on your last math test, that's a sign that maybe you would be more biased in the positive answer direction, right? When in reality, you should take an equal or a planned and even sample of students who got an A, B, C, whatever, regardless of their grade, right? Everybody should be represented. And bias can happen in so many ways. Beside grade, it could be, the teacher picks her 5 favorite teachers. That would probably cause bias. That teacher probably, if they're her favorites, probably treats the favorites better than the other students. If the survey only asks the boys in the class but not the girls, that would be a bias, right? There are so many ways to create bias. So the goal is to have a sample that gives a good representation of the overall population. So whether girls or boys or creatures or people, or regardless of any other factor, right, that might favor a particular part of the population. Again, whether it be based on boy, girl, where they live, what their favorite color is, right? Like all these things. We've planned a sample that evenly represents all parts of the population. So the question is, in which of these cases is that not happening? In which of these cases have we created a scenario where things may come out slanted? So I'll just give one away, for example. Using only people and other creatures who live close to Calamity's home. That's probably going to cause a bias, right? So I would guess that people who are all kind of next door neighbors, they might have similar ideas. They might talk to each other, so their ideas might rub off on each other. That's going to cause a bias. It's going to cause a bias. While something like using a proportional amount of people and other creatures in the sample, that's probably not going to cause a bias, right? That's probably this one here. That's probably a good practice to do, using a proportional amount of people and other creatures in the sample that accurately represents the population. That's not going to be a bias, right? Whereas this one, again, using people who are just located conveniently, that's going to cause a bias. So that's one of them, and that's not the only bias in there. So read through each example and just ask yourself, does this sample accurately measure the population, or does it skew this? Is the sample skewed in a way that a certain part of the population will be represented more so than another part in an uneven or unfair way? Next, which type of sample would not be a good choice for Calamity survey because it is known to cause bias? So this question and your ability to answer this question is all based on what you know about sampling methods. So we know that there is a systematic sample, simple random, and I think these are all, I'm just going to try to remember all the answer choices that you have. Cluster, you have convenience, and you have stratified. And I think those are all the answer choices that you have. So you've learned about each of these types of sampling methods. So which one do you remember was reported to cause bias? And that's the one you're going to have to pick. If you need to, the name itself kind of gives it away, but if you don't quite remember, just read back through your notes, read through the definition of each one. I think you'll be able to sniff out which is the one that is known to cause bias. Now, once you figure out the one that caused bias, keep the other 4 in mind because that's going to help you on the next question. So you're considering, aside from that biased survey method, consider the 4 other options that could be a good choice, and then select the one that you think would be the most effective in this situation. Describe in detail how you would select the individuals in this survey sample. So how you might split the population into groups, what those groups would look like, what's the process you would use to make sure the respondents are chosen randomly. Support your choice of sampling method by explaining why it would be the most effective in reducing bias. So there's not a right answer here. If you're picking from one of those 4 options that are a better and truer random sample, then either any of those 4 choices is going to be fine. It's totally up to you. You just need to justify your response. So again, pick one of the 4 more viable choices from question 2. So first, tell us what it is. What method are you using? Next, describe how you would select the individuals in the survey sample. Okay, so like defining what the groups would look like and what process you would use to make sure the responders are chosen randomly. And then finally, support your random sampling method by explaining why it would be the most effective in reducing bias. Now this is the this is the last question for this section. You can see this section is a little bit shorter, so I really want you to spend some time on this. I expect to see a pretty full paragraph of explanation here. I'll catch you guys on the next video.